Hey everybody, this is Justin with Service and Sacrifice. I have a special guest with me, Erik Mazurek. Were both of your grandpas on a Navy ship?
My grandpa was he was on the Indianapolis at one point in his treks to Guam, Saipan, and Tinian. He hit all the islands in the Pacific. I can get into that as well.
Dude, I remember, for those listening, Erik and I have known each other since like middle school. So I remember being in high school and like sleeping at your house for like movie night. And you said the story about your grandpa who was on the
hmm
Indianapolis,
hmm
which is like famous for sinking, and like there was
Yep.
oil and fire everywhere. And then there were like sharks. And then they
Well,
came
there's
out
the
with,
the famous Quint speech in Jaws, but yeah, the ship was torpedoed twice, went down in like 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and they were stuck in the water for I think something like 4 nights and 3 days or something even longer than that. And I was told, yeah, Grandpa was on that, and my imagination in seventh grade, eighth grade was like he was one of them, and that was not true. I actually learned after he died that no, he was on it, but not during the sinking. He was in between islands and stuff like that. He worked in radar, was a sharpshooter. I'll send you his obituary. It's actually a really nice read
oh,
about his
cool.
life. Yeah.
So, do you know how long each of your grandpas were in for or no?
My grandpa, Missouri, on my dad's side, I don't know how long he was in the military, but for a long time. I have pictures that on the back of them say 1944 from Tinian. And there's a couple here. I have a whole bunch. And I could send these to you if that's easier too, but a whole bunch, but he was there for a few years, I believe, at least during World War II until the war ended, but then was stuck on the island for a while because it took a while to bring all the troops home. But during that time, it's like the war's over, we're safe, and that
Oh,
was a
yeah.
good time. Where at the time, though, the Pacific was very scary because, Iwo Jima is the next was the Mariana Islands, which he was on, and then it's Hawaii. So it was like they were coming, the Japanese were making their way, and they made a stop.
They
But
were coming.
he was in radar, and a lot of the times he never saw active combat, but he saw air raids, and they scared them off with certain pilots. They had great airfields in Tinian. I have a ton of other pictures which I don't have here now of B-29 bombers on the airfield, and that's also the airfield where the Enola Gay took off and dropped the first bomb, I believe. I think both bombs were technically sent from Tinian, but I'm not sure.
We're
I know
talking
that
about the big bombs,
the
right?
big boy, what was it called? Big boy or something? The big guy? I forgot the name of what they called the
I
bomb,
think it was
but
Big Boy.
yeah, he was on that island when the plane took off. So that's crazy.
Saying, were your grandfather's services overlapped? Like, were they at the same
No,
time?
no, no. So my other grandfather on my mom's side was about 10 years older. So he missed the war completely, but he was in the Coast Guard during his time. But he had some really cool stories of camaraderie and never saw combat either, but dealt with a lot of crazy stuff out on the ocean. He told me this one story, and again, I'm playing telephone with what they've told me, and they're no longer here. But sharing stories is something you should do, and I'm very blessed to have known all four of my grandparents and spend a lot of time, especially with my grandfather on my dad's side. I spent a ton of time with him, just talking to him about his stories he had, and he would tell me about this one-legged chicken that they had on Tinian, and it's like you know, we were all hungry, but we felt bad for it. We didn't eat it, like stuff like that. But he had some really fun stories. Not fun. I mean, it's war, but then my other grandpa told me this one story where he was in his bunks in the boat on a boat, a pontoon boat or something. I don't know what they called it, but a torpedo they had. And torpedoes back then, I guess it was like a lug nut and like a spinner that would it would look like a screw. And he said one time they were just sleeping and they just heard the pins starting to move. And so they all just woke up calmly, got the torpedo out, brought it up to the deck, dropped it in the water, and it went off. And it's like it barely went off before blowing up the boat and everyone. So that's just terrifying to think about what these servicemen went through. Both of my grandparents had military honor funerals, and I know Justin, you've mentioned you've done those types of.
When I was in the Army, I was assigned like it's called funeral detail, which
Mhm.
is there's like 6 of you, a few they do the rifle shooting. I was the bugle boy. It wasn't a
You
real
really
bugle.
you blew the horn?
It's just a button. It was a fake
So
button.
you didn't even play it, but you just like held it up to your face for like a minute.
Yeah, it was just like burp,
That's
burp, 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 burp. We did that thing, but yeah, so I did like 6 funerals. Like 4 of them were for like really old people that passed. So those were like okay.
yeah.
But the hard ones were like younger people, like 50s and below, and like the families are just sobbing and they're like, oh, this is tough.
Were
Real
those
tough.
more Vietnam veterans and Korean War veterans and stuff like
A
that,
couple of the
or
younger guys were like Iraq.
Iraq?
Like
Yeah,
real young, yeah. So like I don't know if they had health complications or something else, but like it was tough.
yeah. That must have been. Did you ever do the presentation of the flag?
The lieutenant does it, so you get to see it. But he like he folds it up, he hands it to the either like the mom or the wife or something.
Yeah,
Um,
I have. I know my grandma has. My grandpa Missouri, so my grandma's still alive. She's up there. She's about over 95 now. I think. Yeah, she just turned 96. My grandpa, the flag went to my mom, and I have it now. So I have my grandpa Cruel's flag, which is a nice thing to have. Um, yeah, yeah, but those are tough duties to have, to go to those funerals, and you don't sign up for that really, right? You just find out you've been put on that detail, right?
they just told me, yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Huh.
like, you're doing it, and you have to dress in like your fancy uniform and look all sharp.
Nice way to start the day with strangers in a funeral. It's
It was cool. It was cool to like be a part of it, but
and
it was
here's some stories too, right? Like,
yeah,
like
it's just super.
who was this guy? I think that's why they do it.
Yeah, it's just
But
super somber. So
I can imagine. Yeah. So my mom's dad was Coast Guard, but he didn't fight in any wars. I mean, it wasn't a war torn time. When he could serve. And then my grandpa served in World War II. I also have his dog tags here. He gave these
oh,
to me.
sick.
They're very old.
Oh
But
yeah,
you couldn't see
nice.
him. So it has like his blood type on there, his birthday, I think. It says U.S. Marine Corps, and his religion, which is I think C. I don't know what C meant, if that's Christianity or Catholic, but
They have
that
a
was
social on there or no?
no. That's why I showed it. So no, no, they don't have his
The new
social on
ones,
there. They don't have
the
his
new ones
social.
have the social, so that's why I was like, don't read it out.
If it, yeah, if it's social 6 numbers, I probably just showed it, but he passed away, and there's nothing there left. So go have fun going after that social.
Yeah,
He
that's
also
very
gave me
cool.
this coin too. This was his lucky coin when he was in Tinian and Guam. This is called it's a Chinese coin. It's the Chinese junk dollar, because there's a junk ship on the back. These go for anywhere from $60 up to like $1,500, but I'm never selling this thing. This is one of the family heirlooms that I hope to pass down forever. And
Did he say why it was his lucky coin?
he said something like he found it. He just found it, and at night, and he decided this is calling to me, and it's a dollar coin back then. And he kept it. It was with him throughout all of his time on Tinian.
Cool.
Yeah, and I have that. And then my dad, I know we wanted to talk briefly about Vietnam. My dad graduated high school in 1970. You know what happened that year was the draft. Very scary time for young adults, 17 and 18 and 19. Like, well, I don't have a choice. I'm going to roll the dice and see if you end up in this war that no one really wants to go to. He had a lucky number. Here's his card. And it had his number, and it says his selective service number. He had one, like the last numbers they called out of the whole lottery, but he knew people that were picked like top 10 numbers. And one of his best friends, went to Vietnam, and he told me, he was like, yeah, he went there, and we found out later he was skinned alive. And I don't know the person's name, but apparently the mother, who I would assume has passed away since, never found out, which they all knew in the town and where you grew up. But it was like no one ever told the mother that this happened. But that war was something else too. And the stories that I heard are just awful.
Yeah, Vietnam's wild. I mean, I'm sure we've all seen a Vietnam War movie, and it's just like between like tripwire in the middle of the jungles, dudes in the trees shooting you, like friggin' they put like plants on their helmet, and like you can't tell if it's a bush or a dude.
Torture. Don't forget the torture that would
And
happen
yeah, and the torture.
on both sides. If we're being
I
honest,
mean, dude,
but
you've seen Platoon, right?
yeah,
Where they like the American choppers just like gunning down dudes in rice
yeah,
fields like for
yeah.
no reason.
It's horrible, and I hope we never get to a point like that ever again where we need a draft. Which, I mean, what do you think? Do we need, is the next war, if there is one, would we draft again, or like is there enough willing to enlist?
I think we're good. I think with
Right? Yeah.
technology, like we don't really need physical people as much. Some people would probably disagree with me and be like, dude, China outnumbers us 50,001. I'm like, all right, wow.
You talk to any boomer. You talk to any boomer, they're like, "Get ready for the draft." It's like,
Oh,
I don't know
dude,
what you're talking
anyone
about. Like,
65 and up is like, dude, China.
you're gonna get drafted. It's like,
I've been hearing that since like high school. They're like, 10 years? You were speaking Chinese.
it's funny you say that. My grandpa Missouri in 2011 told me, you should probably learn Mandarin because our next war is going to be with China, most likely, which is crazy back then to think about. He passed away actually December 21st, 2012, which was technically the end of the Mayan calendar um, prediction. So it was like the end of the world. And it was, it was a really sad time. And weeks before he passed away, he was in the VA for a short time, for only a few weeks. And I wanted to talk to you about the VA a little bit and just give you my thoughts there. And I heard your podcast with Anthony, which was very informative and very, how do I say, you guys are just calm about it and just giving the numbers, but also it could be a lot better. I'll just say that.
Yeah, I have to be calm because YouTube would have taken the video down, but like off the record, it
mhm.
pisses me off. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, and I'll say this: my grandpa, he didn't have god awful conditions. I would never call it that. It was, not the most amazing conditions. I didn't like that he had a bunkmate that was coughing up his brains next to him when he was also ill at the time. I didn't like that. I didn't like. I was like, is this the best we give our World War II veterans, the ones that are left? I was thinking that in my head. But I mean, being glass half full, thankful that it exists. And, stuff like that is important to think about. Being grateful that his funeral was paid for. That's what he signed up for when he enlisted, though, and stuff like that. But no, I mean, it's just crazy. Like, how much? What's the number they have as a budget? 380 or $70 billion budget this year. Is that what
Yeah.
the VA has? I mean, you should get, you go in there every time, you should get a foot massage, and there should be some beautiful chandeliers and stained glass windows. It's just money mismanaged. There's no other
Yeah.
explanation. Like, right? Like,
It's mass. I mean, out of the 380, I think like 165 of that goes towards disability payments. So just veterans collecting checks every
yeah,
first.
okay.
But that's still more than enough money to have like adequate staff. Yeah, it's just classic like government mismanagement.
Yeah, and I'm always someone, I never served, I never sacrificed. I know this is the Service and Sacrifice podcast, but no, I'm someone who, like, I don't always support the war, and soldiers don't support the war, but you got to support the veterans. You got to support the soldiers. They're the reason why you can walk this land. You can go to the store and fly commercial, third class. But I mean, it's just, it goes without saying, and it's just like, I think the best countries are ones that support their veterans and support their soldiers. That's my 2 cents.
It's funny you mention that because Vietnam always comes into my mind when people like I always hear I see on social media like people being like, we don't support the soldiers and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
Especially in like Vietnam where there were drafts. Everyone has seen movies and read the news where like soldiers came back from Vietnam and were like booed and called baby killers and stuff.
I've
And
seen Rambo. Come on, grow up.
yeah. But it's like they were forced to go, right? They got out of high school and they're like, you're going to this place you probably never even heard of. And then they came back and people were like, boo, you did that. But they were forced to go.
Not only that, but they were 18 when they went, and a few years later they come back. That was all they knew. And they come back and it's not welcoming arms. And it's like,
Everybody was a hippie.
Yeah,
Like, what happened in a few years? It came back, everybody's a hippie now.
But yeah, my dad would tell me, he had friends that had good numbers too, and it was just the luck of the draw. He didn't know any draft dodgers or any of that stuff, but he was like, there are people out there that were dodging the draft, though, the people with money. Like, my dad did not grow up wealthy, but a lot of people would just do whatever it takes to get some kind of doctor's note to just get out of the war. And it's like, that's a life-changing, guilt I'd have the rest of my life, if I did that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I see it both ways, right? So you either have life-changing guilt where you're like, man, I avoided this, or you go to the jungle and you see some like crazy stuff, bro, right? Like your buddy's head on a spear. Then you come home and you just like that haunts you every day forever.
Also, there's a video that has been going around on YouTube or Instagram. I think Barstool just shared it. It's a 100-year-old Iwo Jima survivor, and he's on a plane. You probably saw this, right?
Yeah, I saw something about him.
Yeah, it's just the captain just saying we have a special guest, celebrating his 100th birthday, an Iwo Jima survivor. He's the reason why we're here, blah, blah, blah. Not to say blah, 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 but just to get through what I was getting to my point. And you just look at this man and he's like, I've lived 80 years longer than my friends, and tips his hat. But I look at him and I'm just like, wow, just a lifetime of why did I survive, and my other people
Yeah.
haven't. It's just a thought I have watching
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I think I saw that video like 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was like, this is great. I love seeing stuff like this. I like to think that it outweighs all the negative. Like, I don't know if you like scroll on TikTok a lot, but like I'll scroll on TikTok the other day and there's this woman who went viral who like, she looks very like Karen-esque. Right.
Oh,
And she's in her car and she's like complaining that military members get like discounts at certain restaurants, like 10% off at Home Depot. And it's like, dude, that's like $5. And so like I see stuff like that. I get so annoyed because I'm like, shut up, dude. But then when I see like this 100-year-old dude getting like, like honored on a Delta flight, I'm like, it restores some faith in humanity.
it's humbling. It's humbling just to realize that there's that out there. And we went to school with so many people that also, like you joined the army. You never saw combat though, but you went through a lot of the in between stuff, and bounced around quite a bit. But like, I won't drop last names, but Andrew is one I think of who saw stuff.
There's a handful of people from our grade.
That, but also I remember when we were in like 9th grade or 10th grade, we'd have like guest speakers here and there, and there would be some guest speakers that would get really dark and tell these stories, and I'm just like, we have it good, man. We have it good.
You just reminded me of something that I haven't thought about in like 10 years. Do you remember? I think we were in like 10th grade. And we were in the big auditorium in high school, and they brought in all these, I think it was Korean War, Vietnam, I don't know.
There was people they brought in high school who were on D-Day. They had a couple in high school from D-Day.
Maybe it was those guys.
Yeah.
I don't know, but they had on all their like dress uniforms, and I had a hat on while we were sitting in this dark auditorium because I always wore a hat, right? I just always wear a hat.
It was usually an Atlanta Braves hat. But...
It was the Atlanta Braves hat. And I didn't know at like 14 you were supposed to like take your hat off as a sign of respect. Like nobody ever told me that, right? The vice principal, I guess, was trying to get my attention. He's like, Justin, take your hat off. And I didn't hear him.
Oh, he had a bone to pick with you.
Yeah. But he told me like 3 times. And then he like pulled me out and like yelled at me. He's like, you're supposed to take your hat off. And I was like, dude, I'm like 14, bro. Like I didn't know.
Yeah, and you weren't disrespectful to veterans back then. I don't recall you being that like kind of, we were punk kids. We were never disrespectful to veterans ever. Like that wasn't our style. But it's just something. I have a story similar to that. I'll see if I can remember it. But I had a moment where I did something where I was like, I had no idea that was disrespectful. And yeah, that happens as you grow up.
What did you do? Someone was at Chili's using their discount. You're like, stolen valor, bro.
Yeah, you got a bloomin' onion.
Oh, free bloomin' onion, dude.
Is that they still do that, or is that gone too? Like take everything from you guys.
They have some things like every Veterans Day, which I haven't done this in a decade because the wait and like the packed restaurant is not worth like $8 off a triple dipper at Chili's to me. Like I'll just pay the $10 on a normal day.
But like it's nice they do that, but like is that all we offer our veterans? Like it's like a bloomin' onion and a triple dipper? Like I don't know.
To me, thank you for making us a free nation. Here is a 75% off Chili's appetizer.
And you also get to board flights first.
Well, I it's funny you brought that up. So I wrote a very sarcastic, I think you read it, article on my newsletter where I basically said how like our benefits aren't that great. Every time, except for very recently, when you hear them, they're like, people who need more time boarding the airplane, time to come up. If you have small kids, apparently, if you have a 2-year-old, you're allowed to board before first class. But what do I know? But they always say and active duty military.
Active duty.
Active
That's the
duty. And
kicker. Yeah.
so I remember I went up a couple times and I showed them my veterans card and they're like, oh, it's active duty. And then they let me go anyway because like who's gonna say no?
Yeah.
But they're like technically it's active duty. It happened one time. They did call veterans on a Breeze flight from Florida. They said veterans. Yeah, dude, I made a sarcastic comment in one of my articles where I was like, imagine you served 20 years in the military and you got out at some crazy high rank like colonel, but you're now a veteran and you went to Iraq and Afghanistan multiple times. And then you have a brand new private who's been in the Army 3 months, who's flying home and they're like active duty and they let this 19-year-old who
you
can't.
know his blood's boiling.
And then,
It's like, oof.
dude, like I'm just like, why don't you guys just say all military personnel? Like statistically on an average airplanes, South American Delta,
Three.
you think they're going to be like, whoa, 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 it's going to delay the
What?
flight.
We're 3 people before first class. Like, we
do
can't
you
have that.
do you think the air traffic controller is like 3 vets? We can't. We don't have
No,
it built
no.
into the
Slow it down.
system.
No. Stop the line. Like,
They're like, what's next? What's next? 100% off Chili's appetizers? And when does it stop?
we can't do that. Well, if you get the bloomin' onion, you have to buy a meal now, right? It used to be like go and get a free bloomin' onion. Now it's like you got to buy a meal for your kid and this and that.
Well, the thing is you have to, unless the rules have changed. In the past, you had to dine in, and
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
should
want to.
always be dine-in.
I didn't
Like,
want to do that because then you have to sit, and I feel bad. So
and
you have to
tipping
give
and
the person a tip.
okay.
Because the first time I tried to do it, I was like,
You tried to do it. That's funny.
the first time I tried to do it, I was like, I want to take this home. And they were like, we can't. They were like, it's dine-in
Whoa.
only. And I was like, can I just put it in the bag and leave? And the guy let me go
Jeez.
because I was very like, I was getting a little rude. I'm like, dude, can we stop doing this, please?
Yeah, and I also wanted to talk a little briefly about some people I played rugby with that served in Iraq and Afghanistan. There's a whole bunch of them. I think at least 5 people that finished their service and then came to Sacred Heart in Fairfield, joined our rugby team because they felt like it was a nice camaraderie thing to do. A couple were actual wounded warriors. One was hit by a roadside bomb, was in a coma. He had very limited play, and it was gentleman's rule whenever he played, which is like tackling lightly, never going big hits, none of that. These guys were a lot older than us because they got out and had the GI Bill and had their college time. And like I was 20 playing with like a 25-year-old or a 30-year-old, and it was funny. And they were so funny and had some amazing stories, and those are some of the best times I remember from my college experience. Yeah.
Wasn't Cronk in?
Yeah, he joined Cronk. Ryan joined the Marines. He was in the Marines. He went to basic training. Paris Island.
Yeah.
Yeah. He would. I'd send him letters and stuff, and yeah, he has some great stories. But he liked his time there. He had bad shoulder issues. He has VA stories too. Maybe I can get him to join your show, and he can tell you. He was in the military from 2000. I'd like to believe 14 to 18 or 14 to 19. I think.
I remember I met him before he joined.
Yeah.
I wish he would have been like, how was it, man? I'd be like, wouldn't recommend it, bro.
He'd
Would
say the
not
same thing
recommend it.
to anyone, honestly. But he's totally changed, and it's made him who he is. And I think of nothing but the highest respect for him and everyone I've met. Like you too, you've changed drastically since getting out of the military. I remember in high school, I was like, "You're going in the military, they're gonna chew you up and spit you out, Justin. Like you're gonna talk back to your." Like you used to talk back to all the teachers and stuff, but like once you get to the military, I can only imagine you got your ass kicked right away, real quick.
I had to do a lot of push-ups as punishment.
I remember you told me a story about you getting on the bus for the first time at like 3 in the morning or whatever it was. And it was just like the guy came on and was like, "This is my bus. Like, I don't want to hear a word for the 6-hour drive." And you're just like, "What did I get myself into?" or something like that. Is that what you told me? I'm playing telephone with you right now.
Yeah, the bus arrived at Oklahoma at like 2 a.m., exhausted from traveling all day, right? And the bus is pitch black, and this dude comes on, and he said it very calmly. He was like, "This is my bus. Everybody get the F off." And dude, I just sat there and I was like, "Oh, it's gonna
Yeah.
be a long 8
See,
weeks,
I did
dude."
okay. See, my telephone skills are okay because I'm relating all these stories. But I remember there was one story you told me, and this was maybe in 2013 or 14 about something with you and like pine needles on the sidewalk. Does that ring a bell? Where
Um,
someone, as punishment, you had to lie in a sidewalk.
I think the story was this other private was getting punished and he had on gloves because it was cold. And the sergeant was like, get down and do push ups in all these, like wood chip. It was like a wood chip pile.
Chips then, yeah.
And he was doing his push ups. And then the sergeant was like, no, take your gloves off. And so this poor kid is doing push ups in these wood chips. And you wouldn't think it would hurt, but his hands were like getting torn up from like the pressure. It actually kind of bothered me because I was like, he made this dude do something knowing it would hurt him. You shouldn't do
Yeah.
that.
I guess there's a balance to push in the military, but like it's all part of the fun in some ways. I don't know. Something about pine needles though. Is there anything there that rings a bell?
Dude,
Where you
I
to
don't know.
like you had to spend a little bit to like line up pine needles on something or someone. Maybe that was someone else who told me that story. But
We had to do a bunch of dumb stuff like get scissors and like if the grass on the sidewalk
that might have been it.
was like, say this is the grass and it's hanging over, they'd be like, you got to cut it. And I was like, this is so stupid. We're getting trained one day on heavy machine guns, grenade launcher, like lock and loaded, boom, blowing up a building.
Mhm.
And the next day they're like, you guys got to cut this grass with scissors. And some of the boomers will be like, oh, it's discipline. You know what it was like back in '65. I'm like, all right, dude, just because it's badass doesn't mean it's intelligent.
Yeah, that's like a Mr. Miyagi stuff, like wax the floor for 5 hours.
Yeah, except it didn't like translate into training.
No, cutting grass perfectly. Yeah, that's interesting. But I just wanted to share some stories about my grandfathers. The one that was in the Pacific during World War II. And then my grandpa Cruel, who was in the Coast Guard after the war, never saw active combat. My dad's stories about Vietnam and just the draft in general, how scary that was, and just how important it is for us young people to spend time with those, if there's any left at this point, that have served in World War II. Talk to them. They're like the last truth of those wars we have. It's history. I'm honored to have spent time with both my grandfathers and listen to them and hear their stories. And the Indianapolis thing was weird because I would ask him about it. He's like, "Yeah, I was on it." And he was like, "I don't want to talk about it." And I always like ran with him. He was on it. And no, he wasn't on it. He was on it. I think he lost people on it though, and friends he knew from the islands, and that's why he didn't want to talk about it. That's my take, at least. And then, yeah, it's just honor our veterans. You know, they're to me priority one in our society. You know, you look at the movie 300. What a they it was the military
I
was
was
the whole
like,
thing. Yeah, I
with
know I'm going
Gerard
somewhere crazy.
Butler?
Yeah, no, but like our country, we don't prioritize veterans and military at all. Is that a crazy take?
What does that have to do with fighting the Persian?
And I mean, it doesn't have to do with fighting the Persians, but it has to do with the way that society was built, and it was built on a military society, and
Okay.
that the soldier was the most respected. That's all I was trying to say.
Yeah, no, I do agree that, when you're in, they don't treat you the best, right? Because they're like, you're government owned property.
Mhm.
But they're like, hey, when you get out, free healthcare, free disability checks, free bloomin' onion. And then you get out and you're like, wow, all these things actually suck.
Yeah, and you talked about the paperwork you had to go through to even get any benefit, and
So much
they make it
paperwork.
difficult. I'm sure they do, and I'm not knocking the process, but it's just it could be better. Is I guess the takeaway I've been hearing from this podcast. When you and Anthony were talking about the VA, it's like it's a great thing to have, and there's all this money that goes into it, why isn't it even better is, I think, the main topic you guys shared, and I can't agree with that more. It should be better. It should be better.
Definitely. As someone who's used the VA for like 4 years, it's so hit or miss. Like one time it'll be super okay. And I'm like,
Mhm.
wow, this is pretty good. And then the other time I'm like, I'm gonna go sign up with private insurance and pay hundreds of dollars a month because these people are driving me crazy. So it shouldn't be like that.
No, I don't think it should be. Um, so hopefully things can fix itself. It's also crazy too. I know we're getting to wrapping up, but the cuts were what, 80,000 jobs? 80,000?
Yeah.
Companies I've worked for, I hear 200 or 300, but 80,000 jobs.
It's a lot.
Is it nurses? Like, what is that number? Is it
I don't know.
janitors? Is it
I know politicians are fighting against it. I don't think at the end of this, the full 80 will be cut, but probably a lot.
That's insane. That number's crazy to even like not it will not work the same way if you lose 80,000 workers. So that's a scary thing, and that's not trimming the fat. Unless they are saying we need to wipe out the VA to pay for the benefits.
Yeah, but thank you for coming on, talking about your grandparents and your dad's story.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to wrap up with?
I'll just end with you don't have to support the war, but always support the soldier.
I thought you were going to quote, I don't remember what movie it's from, but Kevin James, where he's like, God bless America. He's
God
like,
bless NASCAR. What did he say? I
he's
forgot
like,
what movie it was.
get your engines ready. He's like, God bless our troops.
No, no,
I was
no,
hoping
but
you'd quote that, but
no, no, no. But thanks for having me on. This was fun, even though, I'm not never served. And I just wanted to share the stories. And who knows, maybe my kids someday down the line will see this and be like, oh, wow, that was my great grandfather. Or you never know. You never know. So.
hey, man, there's still time for you to sign up.